Okay, cool. It's time, so we can start, guys. So, firstly, good evening, everyone. A very warm evening. I'm hoping everybody is doing good and also had a great day today, right? So, a couple of you are already here. Good evening. Welcome back. Hi, Sreshta. Okay, Ria is also here with us. Good evening, Ria. Anyways, so we'll quickly start. I'll just give it a couple of minutes for other people to join, but in the meanwhile, we can do the introductions, right? So, as most of you all know, my name is Nikitha, and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. It's Tuesday today, so therefore we have a class for standard 11 where we'll be discussing about the Central Islamic lands chapter itself. Yeah, today is like the 7th part. We'll be discussing about that chapter and mostly dealing with Quran, Hadith, and like the learning and culture of what Islam stood for back in those times. So that's what the structure of the class is going to be for today. Okay, Tushar joined us. Hi, Tushar. Okay, so regarding the Telegram channel, there's a Telegram channel for called as Scholars, guys, and the link for that is in the description below of this video. I highly advise you all to go like join that channel because it's very useful as to knowing or like getting updates as to what's happening on the YouTube channel, right? For example, if there are any postponing of classes or rescheduling of classes happening, you will be given intimation on the Telegram channel. So highly recommend go join it. And regarding the Unacademy Combat Scholarship Test, it usually happens for class 9 and 11, which means it's applicable to you basically. So here, the format of the questions is as such that you will be asked 30 questions and will be given 45 minutes to answer it. And the advantage is these tests are both in Hindi and English, so there's no language barrier here. And these are free live tests on Android. Along with that, you can win scholarships worth 1 crore, right? So again, the link is also in the description below. Please go enroll yourselves and take part every week, right? And quickly moving on to a couple of iconic and plus features. Starting with plus, you can actually sit at your own houses and listen to some of the top classes of the top educators, and which are live obviously. Yeah, you can have all of that access on one single platform. You don't really have to juggle between different apps or websites, and there are regular doubt clearing sessions, regular answer writing sessions. Along with that, there are practice tests and also provision for live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, and also mentorship given to you. There's guidance given to you along with access to study materials, which are basically in the form of PDFs. Yeah, very useful during the times of revisions. That'll make your job much easier, right? And regarding the Unacademy Plus pricing, there are 6 ranges depending on the duration you wanted to subscribe. Firstly, there's a 3-month subscription, then there's a 9-month, then there's 12, 15, 18, and 24, right? The prices are clearly listed here, very much visible on the screen. So have a look at them and go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable, right? And quickly moving on to Iconic, here the features are even better and greater when compared to Unacademy Plus, in the sense that there's personal mentorship given to you, like a one-on-one thing, and then there are live doubt solving sessions. There are weekly reports provided to you along with a direct parent connect and study planners. And moving on to the pricing for Iconic, there are again the same durations, the same 6 durations, but the pricing might hike a little bit here because it has extra features. And yeah, so that's about the thing. And before actually quickly moving on to the content for today, let me just tell you that there is some kind of special content which you can access. And in order to access such content, firstly you need to download the Unacademy Learning app on your mobile phone using the Google Play Store or the App Store, and then log into the app with proper credentials and then select your goal, which is 11th standard, right? And then on the menu button in the top left corner, there's an option called special. Click on that. It'll ask you for a code, right? You can use this code, which is TUM10, and then you'll be basically given access to the free content, right? So that's how you access it. Okay, cool. A couple of y'all joined. Good evening, everyone who just joined right now. Without any further ado, we'll quickly move into the chapter for today, right? Very interesting it's going to be, because I personally like Islamic studies or like Hadith, like Quran in general, right? Again, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be like majorly culture based and religion based. So that's just like a heads up into what you can expect from this class, right? Okay, so the sub theme, or like the subheading in your textbook, is called as learning and culture, right? So we'll talk about what kind of culture did Muslims follow. Is that compiling with the rules mentioned as a part of Quran, or did they frame their own laws? Yeah, so we'll look at all these kinds of things in this particular sub theme. So starting off with the first point, right? Muslims, like when the Islam religion was coming up, it was not coming up in isolation, right? In fact, there were so many other traditions already existing within the Islamic state, right? In the initial years, like the late 7th century, like early 7th century and all, when it was just coming up, it interacted with so many other traditions which were already there, right? So there was a regular interaction happening, regular conversations, regular negotiations happening between Islam and other traditions which are there in the Islamic society, like the then regions of Central Asia, right? So because of that, it kind of shaped what Islam is in present day, right? And also the fact that it was becoming a greater and larger community day by day, right? Because so many conversions kept happening, be it because you are generally like genuinely interested in Islam, or like want to follow Islamic principles, you believe in Allah. Those are some kinds of conversions. But as we discussed in the last class, the other type of conversions can be that you are just converting because you don't want to pay tax, right? So whatever the situation is, the Islamic population or the Islamic community is growing day by day, right? So that being said, it is kind of getting some form of legitimacy, some form of dominance in the world, because so many people are following it. Now comes the question, what should be the ideal conduct of a Muslim in public and private? You know, like how is a Muslim supposed to behave? If I'm talking to somebody else, are there some rules I'm supposed to follow? Like, am I supposed to use these particular words, not supposed to use these particular words? Or when I'm in public, right, like what kind of behavior should I exhibit? Am I supposed to be decent? Am I supposed to be like mingling with people? Like, what exactly is the behavior, or like the ideal conduct that one should follow in order to be called as a Muslim? Yeah, so that would be the first major question we need to ask ourselves, right? And the other sort of questions are, what is the object of creation, right? Like God, Allah created so many things according to Quran, right? Out of which human beings are one. Plants, forests, animals, hills, mountains, living things, non-living things, everything, like so many of them are made by Allah, right? So what is the purpose? Do we actually have a purpose? Yeah. If there is one, what is God actually expecting us to do? Yeah. Is he going to give us a set of rules which we should abide by, or we can live according to our own terms? Yeah. These are some of the questions. And also, how can one understand the mysteries of the universe? Again, a very theological question, right? A very complicated question which we don't have any answers, right? We definitely don't have answers for this question. Do we know what's beyond space? No. Do we know what happens after we die? No, right? So these are all mystical questions, mysteries of the universe. So how do you answer these? Is there an answer? Or as humans, we will never know the answer? Yeah, so there are several possibilities, but these are all the questions that started popping up as Islam started growing day by day, right? So some of them have an answer, be it the right answer or the wrong answer, some assumptions, some facts, whatever it is, a category of people, yeah, known as Muslim scholars. Yeah, these are basically learned people. They've read like extensive books. They read Quran, they read hadiths, yeah, like all those religious books, as well as some like proper like academic books and stuff like that. They are Muslim scholars, right? They are learnt men. So they actually try to answer some of these questions, right? They try to answer because even they have that intellectual curiosity, right? Like as a human being, we all wonder about some certain questions. In the same manner, learned Muslims also wondered about those questions and they came up with different answers, right? But we don't really know which is wrong and which is right. But they tried to attempt it. Yeah, they attempted to answer the question. And yeah, so basically, who acquired and organized knowledge of different kinds to strengthen the social identity of the community. Again, how is this related to social identity, right? For example, I'm a Muslim, yeah, and regarding one particular question, like let's say after death, what is there? Yeah, I'm taking a particular stance because I'm a Muslim. But if you go and ask a Hindu, he will have a different stance. He'll be like, according to our scriptures, according to Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata, we know that the next life exists, yeah, like another birth. So we believe in rebirth. But some other religions might not believe in rebirth. According to them, there's only one life, right? So again, so all these kinds of demarcations or the beliefs you have define your social identity, define your religious identity, right? So these are all some of the kinds of things which were coming up in the early 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, right? Okay. Uh, Moving on to the next slide. Any questions still here, guys? Not really, Tushar, because I keep interacting with you guys, right? So like not really. Okay, so I'm assuming there are no questions, but if there are any, just put them down in the chat box, right? Okay, cool. So moving on, for religious scholars, yeah, they have this one particular name in Persian or generally in Islamic traditions, right? They're called as ulamas. Yeah, they are religious scholars, and the kind of knowledge they are deriving from Quran is called as ilm. Yeah, again, the pronunciation might be different from you and me, but the spelling is basically ILM, right? So all these religious scholars, when they're trying to get so much knowledge by studying Quran, by studying certain other things, yeah, and also they are getting to know how exactly did Prophet live his life, yeah, did he sleep on the ground, did he sleep on a bed, where did he eat, how did he pray, how did he interact with people, yeah, basically like general mundane things that Prophet Muhammad did when he was alive. They were trying to study all these aspects, right? So whatever they found in Quran and whatever they found in the Hadith, yeah, that was exactly what is accepted in Islam. Yeah, according to the religious scholars or according to ulamas, whatever Prophet did and whatever Quran says, they are the ultimate words, right? They are the guidelines to the people. That is how people should live in this world. Yeah, so that is what religious scholars claim. And especially in the medieval times, like medieval times is basically 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th till almost 14th, 15th centuries, right? um, ulamas, like these religious scholars, they devoted their whole life to writing tafsir and also hadith, right? So tafsir and hadith, yeah, the spellings are here, guys. It's Tafsir Hadith, right? Very important terms, please remember, right? So what are these terms? So when it comes to tafsir, tafsir is basically like a pretext to the Quran, yeah, like an epilogue to the Quran. Uh, Again, whatever is written in the Quran, it might have different meanings. If I read it, I might interpret in some other way. If you read it, you will interpret in some other way, right? So tafsirs basically tell us what is the actual meaning. Yeah, so many scholars have dedicated their lives in the medieval times to actually decipher the meanings of what Quran is. Yeah, they interpreted it in different means and wrote their own versions of tafsir, right? So that is tafsir. And the next one is hadith, right? So hadith is basically whatever Prophet Muhammad said and did, whatever he spoke, whatever he did, everything is like written down, like they were made a notes, right? That is basically hadith, right? So ulamas in the medieval times, they dedicated to write so many versions of hadiths and tafsirs. So that's basically the point. And in the meanwhile, Tushar has a question. He's basically asking who wrote Quran. Again, there is no answer to this, Tushar, because there is no one version of Quran we have, right? As we go ahead, you'll also see in the next couple of slides that we do not have one Quran. Yeah, we have n number of versions of Quran, but the main content of the Quran is that obviously like some kind of angels or Allah himself or some kind of voice, yeah, it spoke to Prophet Muhammad during 610 to 632, almost for 22 straight years, right? It was just oral back then, like whatever message was being given to Prophet Muhammad, he came back to the village and spread it to neighbors, right? But after he died, a lot of people started writing down whatever they remember, whatever Prophet Muhammad told them, right? They wrote it down like 7th century, 8th century. They started writing it down, and then finally in the 9th century, yeah, people actually sat down, like a group of people, and they combined all these different versions, like all these different scattered pieces, yeah, and they compiled it together to form one book, which we call as Quran, right? So basically the answer is we do not have an answer, yeah, because there are many versions of Quran. I'm hoping that answers your question, Tushar. Okay, we'll quickly move on to the next point, right? So some made tafsirs, as I was telling you, some wrote hadiths, and some other people went on to prepare a totally new set of books, yeah, new set of literature, which is called as Sharia, right? Sharia is basically the book of laws. Constitution has laws for India, right? Just like that, for the Muslim tradition, this Sharia, it's a book which has so many laws written in it, rules and regulations. Yeah. So Sharia, if basically translated into English, it means that it's a straight path. Yeah, basically the path that Muslims are expected to follow once they convert to Islam, right? So again, these are the rules or laws which talk about what is the relationship that one is supposed to maintain, yeah, between yourself and God, or between like a human and God. What sorts of rituals are to be performed? Are sacrifices permissible or no? Yeah, these all of the rules are mentioned as a part of Sharia, right? So whatever the relation between God and a human is, it's called as ibadah, right? The spelling is here, ibadah. And the kind of relation that a man and another man shared, like a human to human connection, right? via like the social order or like through social affairs, that is called in Persian as muamalag, right? Again, ibadah, muamalag are not two particular important terms, so you can just leave them, but I'm hoping you got the gist, right? Human to human connection, muamalag, and the other type of connection is human and God, that's called as ibadah, right? So all these rules are mentioned as a part of Sharia, which is the law book, yeah. And in framing Islamic laws, yeah, somebody has to sit down and write all these laws, right? So while it was being compiled, while people were actually writing Islamic law, they were called as jurists, right? Like whoever people responsible for writing are called as jurists. They made use of reasoning and logic, right? Since not everything was apparent in the Quran or Hadith, and life had become increasingly complex with urbanization. Again, we've studied how urbanization started kicking in the 7th, 8th centuries. So many new cities started coming up. So because of that, the complexities of life in general grew, right? They increased. So in order to go with that flow, it was important to insert some kind of logic slash reasoning behind whatever they said, right? Quick examples, right? Let's say now while you're doing namaz or like praying to Allah, you're supposed to like turn your face towards Mecca or Medina in that particular direction and pray. That was just one statement made in the 6th centuries or 7th centuries, yeah. But now while jurists are actually framing the Islamic law, they need to answer why should they face Mecca. Is there any logic behind it? Do we have a particular reason? Yeah, all of those are mentioned as a part of the Islamic law, which is Sharia, right? So that's again the importance of Sharia. Any questions still here, guys? Yes, Ravi, to answer your question, yeah, tomorrow we'll be having the 12th class quiz. Okay. Cool. We'll quickly move on to the next slide then. So, differences in the interpretation of the sources and methods of jurisprudence, right? Again, when you're reading a particular thing, I might understand it in a different way, yeah. My other person can understand it in another completely different way. We might be having contradicting views, yeah, like totally opposite views. So in that sense, that is exactly what happened while scholars were trying to interpret all these Qurans, these hadiths, the Sharia laws, yeah. So whenever they tried to interpret these sources, there were some kind of differentiation in opinions, and this in turn led to the formation of different schools of law, yeah. In particular, we have 4 schools of law, right? Schools of law in Persian are called as mazhab. Important, please remember, yeah. And these types of schools of law were coming up in the 8th and 9th centuries. So in the 7th century, everything was fine. Like everybody followed the same thing, everybody interpreted it in the same manner, yeah. But as 8th and 9th centuries came in, these divisions sort of expanded further, and eventually they broke into 4 schools of law in the 8th and 9th centuries. So what are these 4 schools? Yeah, again, very very important, guys. Please remember all the 4 schools names, right? The first one is Maliki, the second one is Hanafi, the third is Shafi, and the fourth is Hanbali, right? Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi and Hanbali. So these are 4 different schools of law which we have, and the kind of names which are given to these schools of law they are named after the actual jurist, yeah, who is also called as faqih in Persian, right? Basically the person who was the leader of the sect, right? The leader for Maliki school of law is Malik, yeah, he has a full name but his last name is Malik, right? The leader for Hanafi school of law is Hanaf, right? So that is what I mean by they are named after the leading jurist, right? And out of all these four, Hanbali school of law is the most conservative. Like they're very orthodox in their approaches, right? So that is the four schools of law. And nextly, the Sharia provided guidance on all possible legal issues. Yeah, whatever it is. Like you take up any issue which is possible in a particular society, and if you go back to Sharia, Sharia has answers to all of those questions, right? Ranging from personal issues to commercial matters to constitutional matters to penal issues, whatever it is, Sharia has answers to all of them. But the major difference is when it comes to personal issues like the marriage between two people or the divorce or inheritance of land rights and all those things, yeah, like whom are you supposed to marry, how many people can you marry, what is the way in which you'll get a divorce, yeah, so all these are personal issues to anybody, right? These kinds of issues are more explicitly answered in Sharia. They have a accurate answer, right? Rather than the laws on commercial purposes and constitutional issues, right? So that's how the Sharia was framed. Um, okay, and the picture you can see on the screen right now is obviously a courtyard and some kind of building which you can see, right? So to be very specific, this is a courtyard of Mustansiriya Madrasa. Again, Mustansiriya, yeah, it's a madrasa, right? We'll see what a madrasa is. But this is the courtyard of Mustansiriya, which is located in present day Baghdad, right? Baghdad is in Iran. And it was founded in the year 1233 AD, right? So what is madrasa? Madrasa is some kind of college education, yeah, where students used to go and learn about certain things, like how we have colleges and universities right now, right? In the same manner, for Muslim populations, madrasa was a symbol of college. They used to go there and learn certain things in life, right? So in some cases, all these madrasas were attached to like the big mosques in the cities, right? But in other cases, madrasas had a mosque attached to them. What does this basically mean? Like, let's say first there's a mosque already there, already existing from so long, and then they finally decide to build a small madrasa beside that mosque. But other times, the madrasa might be already existing, yeah, because it's huge, it's so popular, and then just beside that, in some cases, mosques were built, right? So madrasa and mosque both have equal importance here, right? So this is just an example of one in Baghdad. Okay, so that's about madrasa and Sharia and all. We'll be dealing with Sharia in the next couple of slides also, but we'll pause Sharia there and we'll have a quick look at Quran here, right? Again, Tushar was asking a little bit about Quran, right? So we'll see what exactly the content of the Quran is, or who wrote it, or what kinds of things are specified or mentioned as a part of Quran, right? Okay. Ajay, these classes are going to be only in English, right? I'm not well versed in Hindi, so it's only English for the classes. Yeah. Cool. So Quran, right? So one particular verse from Quran, I've just put it here because it just gives you a rough understanding as to what actually is the content of Quran, right? So Quran has so many chapters. We'll see how many exact chapters are there. But for now, just look at this particular verse, which is the verse number 27 belonging to chapter 31 of Quran, right? It says this, yeah, and if all trees on earth till exhausted in writing. So again, the basic meaning of this is you keep on writing whatever Quran is telling you, right? There is so much that Allah has told Muhammad, yeah. Even if you start writing down all of it, all the paper available to us is not sufficient, because that is how much the content we have as to what Allah has actually told Prophet Muhammad, or what actually is the Islamic traditions that we are supposed to follow, right? So that's how huge the information is, or like the bundle of knowledge that we have right now. Yeah, that's just like one example verse, but not necessarily you don't necessarily need to remember it, right? So again, if you look at this picture, right, this is one excerpt from Quran. It's basically a page from Quran written on vellum in the 9th century. So what is vellum? Vellum is some kind of material on which people used to write extensively back in 9th century, and it is made up from animal membrane, right? Animals were killed, their skin or some kind of animal material, animal body part is taken, and then they were made into a material called vellum, right? On vellum, this particular stanza is written, yeah. It is the beginning of Surah 18. Surah is nothing but chapter, right? Chapter as a part of Quran. So in chapter number 18, this is the beginning portion. Like this is how the chapter 18 starts in Quran, right? So it basically talks about the Moses story. Moses story is also there in the Bible. The exact story is being mentioned as a part of 18th chapter of Quran as well, right? And this is the Kufi script which you see here, yeah, and it's very angular, right? You see all these angles here, right? It's an angular script, and whatever vowels are written, some of them has red signs, right? For example, here there's a red sign, there's a red sign here, there's a red sign here, there's one here, right? So if you look at all these red signs, it basically is conveying the information that some kind of pronunciation is different there, yeah. Either you need to stress on that syllable or de-stress, yeah. Basically that indicates that the pronunciation of the language kinds of differs whenever there is a red dot on the Kufi script, right? Okay. Ajay, I'm not sure, Ajay. I'm sorry, but I can't help you in this case. I don't really know. Okay, so what exactly is Quran, right? Again, as I was telling you, it is divided into so many chapters. To be very specific, they are divided into 114 chapters, right? Chapters are called as surahs in Persian. Remember that again, very important. Yeah. So this Quran is actually a holy book which was initially written in Arabic, right? Later translated to so many languages, but originally it was written in Arabic, right? So again, the chapters are arranged in such a manner, yeah, basically following the descending order of length, as in the longer the chapter is, the first it is placed. Yeah, basically the first chapter is bigger, the second chapter is smaller than the first, third is smaller than the second. Yeah, descending order, you all know, right? So that's how the chapters are placed. But there is one exception to this rule. Yeah, one exception is the first chapter itself, which is very, very short. It just has like one prayer, which is called as Al-Fatiha. Yeah, basically the opening prayer for any sort of Muslim prayer you're supposed to do, and this is the only exception to the descending order rule. Other chapters follow the descending order rule, right? Also, like according to the Muslim traditions, what Islamic people believe in, the Quran in itself is a collection of messages. Yeah, all these are called as revelations, right? I told the story a couple of times. Like, Prophet used to go to the caves, there he heard some kind of voices. Yeah, some also say that angels appeared before him and gave him the message. Different versions of the story, but basically he got all of these messages slash information. He heard these, right? He heard these over a span of 22 years. Yeah, from 610 to 632 AD. So after listening to all of them, he came back and spread the message to the surrounding people. So again, as we discussed, the first couple of years he was in Mecca, I think almost till 622 AD, right? So the first initial years when he was in Mecca, he received the message in Mecca, and when he was forced to leave Mecca and go to Medina, yeah, because of the opposition of other tradition people, he went back to Medina, right? If you remember, we discussed this in a couple of classes earlier. So even after going to Medina, he still continued to listen to those voices, yeah, which is basically the message of the God sent via angels to Prophet Muhammad, right? And he died in 632, right? All of us know that he died in 632, and exactly 2 decades later, like roughly 2 decades later, somewhere around 650 AD, yeah, these messages, whatever Prophet Muhammad received via like listening to the voices, all of them were written down. Yeah, so many people wrote them down, not just one, two. His disciples, random strangers, yeah, neighbors, whoever it is, they put in effort and wrote it down, yeah, on different materials, and that was done by around 650 AD, right? And the oldest complete Quran we have today dates from the 9th century, right? So again, the same point I made when I was trying to answer Tushar's question, right? It was not written once. It was written by different people over different periods of time, and by the time all of those were combined and made into a single holy book, which we now call Quran, right? The first edition, or like the oldest edition of it, is from the 9th century. So from 7th to 9th, we did not have a Quran. We just had bits and pieces of it written by random scholars, like different scholars, like shorter versions, like just few verses of them. But by 9th century, we have a total complete Quran, right? Um, and also, like, not just on paper, right? There were variety of sources on which these messages were written earlier. Like by 650, these were written on Dome of the Rock. Dome of the Rock is again an institution, a religious institution in Jerusalem. I've shown you that figure as well in a couple of classes before, right? So some of the verses, some of the verses or messages of Allah were written on Dome of the Rock. Some of them are engraved on the coins. Yeah, all this was happening in 7th century, and all of these were compiled together and formed the first Quran in 9th century, right? So that's how the compilation of the first or the oldest form of Quran happened. Any questions still here, guys? Okay, I do not see any questions, therefore I will continue, right? Okay, so many scholars, they even now use Quran to get some sort of information or knowledge, right? if you're using Quran as some sort of historical source material, yeah, it will kind of pose some problems or some challenges, and that is what early historians actually face this problem, right? Because the first reason being, it's a scripture, it's a religious scripture, right? It's a text vested with religious authority, so it only has like one perspective, right? It only talks about what Islam believes in, or like what Allah said. Yeah. So what theologians generally believe is that whatever is written in Quran, it has to be understood literally. Like, just take it by face value. Yeah, that sort of connection should be there to Quran. But there were some set of scholars who argue that whatever is written in Quran should not be taken at face value. Instead, as human beings, we have that intellectual capacity to interpret whatever is written in Quran, and therefore we should give them wider interpretations, right? So again, these are contradicting views. Some people say that you have to take it literally, some people say you have to interpret it with different meanings. So contradicting views, right? So that is why it is difficult for us to take Quran at face value, yeah, as and consider it as some kind of historical source. It's kind of difficult, and also poses challenges, right? One example of it is in the year 833 AD, when Abbasids were actually ruling over the Islamic State, and the then Abbasid Caliph was Al Mamun, right? So he held a particular view that Quran is God's creation rather than his speech. A totally different view, totally radical view, right? He's saying Quran is just something that God created. Yeah, it's not about his speech, it's not about what the content of the Quran is, but it is just a symbolic thing which kind of signifies the God's creation. That is the view of Al Mamun, right? So that is the first problem, different interpretations of it, right? The second problem of taking Quran as a historical source is this, that Quran very often speaks in metaphors, right? Again, English kids know what metaphors are, right? So if you read Quran, you will easily understand that that particular type of speech is used in Quran, unlike the Old Testament of the Bible. Yeah, it does not narrate events but only refers to them. Again, explaining it through an use of an example, right? Going back to the Noah story, which we read a couple of classes back, like where there was a flood, he had to save all the species, then he made up a boat, he kind of picked up two humans, two animals, two birds, yeah, like two species belonging to every category. He chose them and he put them in the boat. So that is the whole episode we get from the Noah story. That is what we derive from Bible, right? But if you go back to Quran, it does not explain all the stories or all the events in particular detail. Yeah, it does not narrate the event exactly, but it just refers to them. It's like, okay, the Noah episode. But what is the Noah episode? We don't know what that is, right? So it does not give us explicit details. So that is the second problem if we want to consider Quran as a historical source, right? So those are a couple of problems. And what did Islamic scholars in the medieval world did was, uh, they had to make sense of many verses with the help of hadith, right? So hadith, as I was telling you, is what Prophet Muhammad did and said when he was alive, right? So they used to like study Quran, study hadith simultaneously. So if they don't understand anything from Quran, they used to go back to hadith for the evidence. So that is what Islamic scholars in the medieval India did, corroborating the sources, right? So again, as I was telling you, many hadiths were written to help the reading of Quran. The sole purpose as to why hadiths are written is to complement Quran, right? So that was the Quran, guys. Again, any questions till here? Because we came to end of what Quran is. Now we'll be going back to Sharia, right? Any questions on Quran? Please put them down. I'll just give it a couple of seconds in case you'll have to type down your questions. Okay. No questions, but Ayushi has something to say. Oh, Ayushi, I didn't know that. Belated happy birthday, Ayushi. I'm hoping you had fun yesterday. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, no questions. In that case, we can move forward, right? So we now finished what Quran is. Now we are going back to what Sharia is, right? Some part of it we've discussed in the earlier slides. Now coming back to Sharia, yeah. So before it took its final form, basically by the time Sharia was finalized or concluded and given a concrete form, right, it was adjusted to take into account the customary laws. So all these customary laws are called as urf in Persian. Yeah. Again, Sharia is like one broader category which is supposed to be applied to all the Muslim populations, right? But there are certain situations where the local laws, yeah, like at the subsystematic level, like villages or small cities or small towns, they have their own laws, right? So sometimes they might not be aligning with what Sharia is saying. That is why while Sharia was being compiled, it was very, very difficult to include all of these customary laws as a part of Sharia, right? And also it deals with the laws of state on political and social order. Like, and a kingdom should be designed in such a way, there should be one ruler, the power should be divided between these people, yeah, like so many political situations, other social orders, social life, all of these are mentioned as a part of Sharia, right? And the customary laws, as I was saying, the local laws, right, they retain their strength in large parts of the countryside. Obviously, right, because they are local. So only in the rural areas people will start following customary laws, like, uh, and they continue to bypass the Sharia. For example, let's consider the given example, right, which is basically the inheritance of land by daughters. So let's say according to the customary laws, yeah, while a daughter is getting married and going away to the in-laws place, the customary law states that she doesn't have any right, the daughter doesn't have any right to inherit her father's land or wealth. That is what customary law states. But if you look at Sharia, yeah, Sharia states that daughters actually have the right to inherit. So these are two totally opposite views, right? But in these kind of situations, if there's a deadlock, which law prevails? Which law supersedes? Right? So in that case, it is very often understood that it was always the customary laws which had significance, which kind of overruled the Sharia law, right? So they had much greater importance than Sharia, especially in the countryside. I'm talking about countryside, the rural areas, right? And in most regimes, like basically so many dynasties and empires we have had, the ruler or basically his officials, they only dealt with all these state security issues, like giving appointments to certain officials, whom to make a part of the court, who should not be included as a part of the court. All these issues related to political order, they would decided by the king himself with the consultation of his prime minister or courtiers and people like that. even though there existed a position called as Qazi or judge, right? These general issues were dealt by the ruler himself. But there were some kind of cases when it comes to like law and order issues which were which were given to the judge. Yeah. So there was one judge in every city or locality, right? He was called a Qazi. Yeah. He often acted as arbitrator in disputes. Basically favoritism, right? Like partial treatment. If two parties are going to the judge, they're like, even though, let's say me and I and my friend are going, even though I'm correct, if the judge is very partial in nature, and he knows the other person, he knows my friend, he's going to support my friend even though I'm correct, right? So that kind of arbitrariness was very much there when it comes to solving all these disputes, especially in the case of qazis, right? There was a particular law called Sharia which you're supposed to abide by, but that was not always the case. They even surpassed Sharia at a lot of times, right? Okay, any questions still here, guys? Okay, no questions. Then we'll move forward. Cool then. Now that was what Sharia is. Now we'll quickly move on to the next slide, which is basically talking about the Sufis, right? Sufis is one such term which you already know, but not in very much detail, right? In your 12th class, you'll have a whole lot of chapter dedicated to Sufis, but for now, we'll just go into like the basic details, right? So Sufis are basically some kind of religious minded people who were coming up in the medieval Islam, right? They are Muslims. They believe in Allah, they believe everything which Allah said, but they truly believe in a more deeper and like a personal connection with God, rather than performing all these sacrifices, or rather than doing all these extra like things which Islam generally does. Yeah, they say that all of this is not necessary, but instead, on a personal level, if you have this sort of deeper connection with Allah, deeper connection with God, yeah, that is more important. That is what Sufis propagate. That is the message of Sufis, right? So, the way you can actually achieve this, the way you can actually become closer to God, is by following asceticism and mysticism, right? Asceticism is, as most of you all know, is becoming a saint, yeah, renouncing all the worldly pleasures, and the mysticism is like an extreme part of asceticism, right? The next advanced level. So by following these two methods, it's very easy for Muslims to become closer to God. That is what Sufis claim, right? Aditya has a question regarding the parts of the chapter. Aditya, we still have two more parts to go, Aditya. Yeah. Shrestha just joined us. Hello, Shrestha. Okay, that answers your question, Aditya. Cool. We'll move on to the next point. We're talking about basically Sufis and how they believe in asceticism and mysticism. So, what it basically propagates, right? The more society gave itself up to material pursuits, like as centuries passed by, it is very evident that people are interested in material gains. Yeah, they want all these luxuries, they want like a perfect materialistic way of life. Yeah, they want all these worldly pleasures. But what Sufis propagate is exactly the opposite of that. They're like, you don't need all these pleasures, like you don't need all these wealth and riches. Just give up all of those. Yeah, renounce this world and start following the path of asceticism. Become a saint. Become closer to Allah. That is how you're going to get salvation. Yeah, and then rely only on God, because He is your ultimate protector. Nobody else is going to protect you. These are some of the words of Sufis, right? And coming back to the later 8th and early 9th centuries, these ascetic inclinations were elevated to a higher level of mysticism. The exact point I was mentioning, right? Like mysticism is a extreme form of asceticism, right? Like you just have to do something extra than just renouncing the world. Yeah, so in 8th 9th this ascetic behavior transformed into mystic behavior, right? And the way you can actually become a mystic is by following the ideas of pantheism and love. We'll look at what pantheism is in the next slide, right? But that kind of stepping up of the level happened in the 8th and 9th centuries. Okay, so what is pantheism, right? So pantheism is a concept where a human, after his death, yeah, his soul will directly go and connect with God. There is nothing in between. Nobody is going to stop you in between. If you're a true Muslim, if you follow a mystic way of life, after your death, you will be directly connected to God. That is what pantheism propagates. That is the idea of pantheism, right? It's oneness of God and His creation. His creation are humans, right? So they are merging and becoming one, right? So that is pantheism. And how can you actually achieve this, right? So a woman saint by name Rabia, she belonged to the region called Basra, right? So in 891 AD, she wrote one of the poems. Yeah, she wrote so many poems, but one of them was very, very famous, where she says that the way you can actually achieve mysticism, or the way you can actually unite with God, is through an intense love for God. Yeah, she's like, you just need to completely devote yourself to God. Like you are basically leading your life so that you will be united with God after your death. So these are some of the philosophies which she mentions as a part of her poems in 891 AD. And other than her, there is also another poet called as Bayazid Bistami. Yeah, he was a Iranian Sufi, like belonged to Iran basically, and he died in 874 AD. So he actually he also propagated the concept of mysticism, and he was the first to teach the importance of submerging the self in God. In Iran, in Iranian languages, the self is called as yana, right? Basically Persian language, right? So he stressed on the fact that it's very important for us to submerge ourselves with God, like merge ourselves with God, right? So these are two of the important poets which propagate the path of mysticism, right? And lastly, Sufis used musical concerts, sama, right? Like sama is basically people gathering together and singing all the songs and poems. That is the act of sama. So they often focused on musical concerts, that by singing all those songs, by reciting all those poems and verses, it kind of induces the emotions of love and passion among people. Yeah, it kind of melts the hearts of people, and then they'll probably decide to merge with God, right? So these are some of the ways in which you can worship, forms of worship, right? And lastly, Sufism is open to everybody, regardless of their religious affiliation, right? I'm a Hindu, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a Parsi, doesn't matter. if I go to a Sufi saint and ask him to take me into the Sufi order, he will take me, because Sufism is not related to Islam in particular, but it can be applied to any religion, right? The ultimate goal is merging with God, right? So irrespective of your status, irrespective of your gender, women, man, low caste, high class, anything, Sufism is always open to everybody, right? And the example of that is a person by name Dulnun Misri, right? He died in the year 861. So his grave is seen near the pyramids in Egypt, like he was buried in Egypt, right? So he goes to the Abbasid Caliph. At that point of time in 861, the Abbasid Caliph was Al-Mutawakil, right? He goes to the Caliph and he says that he actually learnt what true Islam is from an old woman, and what true chivalry is from a water carrier, right? These are in quotes. This again is just to tell you that a old woman, like she's old. Secondly, she's a woman, gender difference, right? Even though she's an old woman, she was able to teach me what true Islam is. And I've learned what true chivalry is from a water carrier. Water carrier is very like looked down upon in the society, very inferior to other people, but he taught me what true chivalry is. So that is why he makes this point in front of the Abbasid Caliph that it doesn't matter who you are, but if you have those morals and ethics within you, that is all that matters, right? And in fact, I've learnt a lot from the old women and water carrier. That is what Dulnan Mishri says, right? And by making religion more personal and less institutional, yeah. So Sufism is all about personal connection with God. I've stressed on this point enough. Like religion is not an institution. Religion is not something you should make profits out of. No, it's not an institution. In fact, it's some kind of personal attachment between a individual human being and God, right? By propagating such themes, Sufism has gained popularity on a much wider scale, right? And it kind of posed a challenge to Orthodox Islam. Because according to Orthodox Islam, religion is an institution, right? But Sufis, saints are totally against this concept. They are like, religion is not an institution, but in fact religion is something personal between a human being and God, right? So that's why they posed a challenge to all these conservative Islam scholars, right? Okay, so basically that brings us to the end of class. Good that we've winded up on time today. Okay guys, we still have 2 more classes to go on this chapter. I know it's pretty long. It's kind of taking a lot of time for us to complete, but nonetheless, it's important chapter. We need to focus on every theme, right? So any questions till here, please put them down in the chat box. I'll be very happy to answer them. Keep typing down. In the meanwhile, I'll try to wind this up because we're already like 5 minutes past time. So regarding the offers I was telling you initially regarding the plus and iconic offers. So there's a special offer going on right now. It started on 18th of September. It's a limited offer, right? So I highly recommend you all to go grab it before the offer ends. And the offer is such that if you use this code, which is TUM10 while subscribing to Unacademy Plus or Iconic, you'll obviously get a 10% off straight away. But if you do it right now before this offer ends, you'll be getting an extra 5% off on a 9-month subscription and an extra 10% off on a 12+ month subscription. It's a limited offer, so I highly recommend go grab yours before the offer ends, right? Okay, cool. So if you like the content of this videos, please do like it as soon as the live stream ends, right? Also comment down below with any questions or queries or concerns you have. Share it as much as possible and subscribe to the channel Unacademy and scholars in particular, right? Thank you guys. Thank you again for tuning in. It was a great session. Um, Thanks again. I'll see you guys again on. No, actually, we don't have a class on Thursday. I'll let you know, right? So I'll see you guys next. But yeah, so that brings us to the end of the class. Any questions? I'll be very happy to answer them. But if not, we're almost towards the end. I'll just hang around for a couple of seconds in case anybody has any questions. But if not, you'll are free to leave, guys. That's the end. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and bye, everyone. Okay, Ria says time for IPL. The class is over, Ria. You can go watch IPL right now. Cool. No questions. So basically, bye, guys. I'll see you around. Cool. Till then, have a good evening and also have a good day tomorrow. Right? But be safe. Bye bye.